Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, and lots of different things to get into. But obviously, the big takeaway about the questions around the assassination, the U.S. intelligence believing that they were likely aware of the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. How would you describe this bilateral meeting at the Oval Office?
I would say jaw-dropping, Andy, to give a little bit of a cop-out, to be honest. I don't think any of us who cover the White House have seen a scene like we saw unfold Tuesday afternoon, where President Trump, fully castigated a reporter for asking about the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And then you had the Crown Prince himself give a particularly metered and even semi-repentant answer where he denied having anything to do with the assassination itself, but as the de facto ruler of the nation, took responsibility and vowed that nothing like this would ever happen again. It was startling, to say the least. And then, of course, President Trump, went in on that same reporter for later in the meeting, asking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. And that was a little bit of Trump that we haven't seen really in this term. He has gotten into it with some reporters from CNN and NBC, but he really lost it on ABC's Mary Bruce, going so far as threatening to have the FCC investigate ABC and revoke their broadcast license. So some fireworks were certainly on display this afternoon.
Yeah, and obviously that reporter pushing back, saying these questions are important. And she was asking about the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Obviously, U.S. intelligence say that he was aware of this, but they're also asking about 9/11 and the connection from Saudi Arabia to that. I do want to take us out to this just shy of 2-minute clip of what exactly happened. Some of these responses from Trump in the defense of Mohammed bin Salman and more. Let's listen in this briefly from earlier today.
Gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Just you ask, Mr. President, you allow me to answer. I feel painful about, the families of 9/11 in America, but, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. That's the purpose of 9/11. So whoever buying that means they are helping Osama bin Laden's purpose of destroying this relation. He knows that strong relation between America and Saudi Arabia, it's bad for extremism, it's bad for terrorism. And we have to approve him wrong and to build our relation, to continue developing our relation. It's critical in the safety of the world. It's critical against extremism and terrorism. About the journalists, it's really painful to hear anyone that been losing his life for no real purpose or nothing illegal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc. in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Mr. President. All right, you're just listening in there and bringing back in Christian Datoc. You kind of mentioned that metered response from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and of course, Trump defended him, saying, quote, things happen. Is this another point against the U.S. intelligence community from President Trump? Because it was U.S. intelligence that said that potentially they were aware of this.
Well, it was U.S. intelligence that has, pointed to connections between the 9/11 planners and the Saudi government. And it was, again, U.S. intelligence, the CIA specifically, that, determined MBS likely either ruled off, signed off on the order, or exactly, carried out, or ordered the action against Khashoggi specifically. So it's certainly not like this is pulled from the conspiracy theory corners of the internet. And I do think it's interesting to hear Khashoggi, in the one hand, point to the CIA's assessment about Osama bin Laden's designs for 9/11, and then sort of brush the other assessment about, again, his own involvement in this assassination under the table. I think when you look at President Trump's foreign policy, specifically as it relates to Saudi Arabia, he's willing to say anything to get these foreign investments, coming through the door, not only from the Saudis, but from our other partners and allies in places like Asia, in Latin and South America, and of course, some new developing countries in Africa. He's trying to broker economic accords there. So I do think ultimately the economy runs everything for President Trump, and it's even spilling over slightly, at least, it seems, to his foreign policy as well.
And obviously this overshadowing the meeting because they tried to highlight some of those investments, but obviously kind of points and headlines will tune back to that. And just to wrap it up a little bit on social media, the widow of Jamal Khashoggi saying that there's no justification to murder my husband while Jamal was a good, transparent, brave man. Many people may not have agreed that his opinions and desire for freedom of the press. The Crown Prince said he was sorry, so he should meet me, apologize, and compensate me for the murder of my husband. So I just wanted to wrap that one up because it obviously got a lot of mention earlier on today. I also want to ask you, because this is the first visit stateside, we saw F-35s fly over. Was announced kind of the deal there that they will be given some of these F-35s, now $1 trillion. What else came from this and the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia? How has it melded over the years?
It's interesting, you know, both President Trump and former President Biden before him, you know, talked a big game on the campaign trail about holding Saudi Arabia accountable for, you know, their lengthy history of human rights abuses. But when it came time to put the, you know, rubber to the pavement, you saw both leaders embracing MBS. And to be quite frank, he is a polarizing figure. On the one hand, you have all of these allegations of terrible human rights abuses, but on the other, as he has taken over more and more his father, the king, you know, he has pushed Saudi Arabia towards some more progressive reforms, specifically when it comes to the rights of women and young girls. So he is a controversial figure. But I do want to hammer home, I think, one really important point from this meeting that we haven't talked about yet, and it's the possibility of Saudi Arabia signing on to the Abraham Accords. Of course, the normalization agreements that the U.S. is helping Israel broker with Arab nations in the region. And look, MBS was totally clear about where he stands. He wants Saudi Arabia to join onto the Abraham Accords eventually, but there's going to have to be significant peace in Gaza, progress towards standing up a new government, and what he, you know, reiterated calls for, a two-state solution to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we know exactly what needs to happen to get Saudi Arabia onto this agreement. It's still to be determined if we'll get there while President Trump is in office.
Yeah, that would be a big step forward in terms of that region and so much unrest. We saw, obviously, the ceasefire deal there in Israel in that Gaza war. I do want to ask you, before I let you go here, Christian, about the Epstein files, because we just saw within the last several hours that the House moving through it, an overwhelming vote. We heard yesterday President Trump saying he would sign it if it did come across his desk. What was his response today in terms of questions from reporters? You mentioned tense moments again with that reporter from ABC. What else did he say? Did he stand by the fact that he would sign it if it came to his desk?
He did, and we got indication from Senator John Thune that it seems like the White House has been in contact with Republicans in that chamber, both before and after the House vote, because Thune indicated to reporters he wanted to move this thing to a vote as soon as possible. That was still up in the air on Sunday night when the president urged House lawmakers now to vote in favor of this bill, as opposed to what he was saying for the last 2 months or so since the discharge petition was officially raised by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. And I do think the president wants to put this behind him. From the White House officials I'm talking to, they still think that bringing the Epstein bill to the floor for a vote will be a win for Republicans. They can go back to their districts heading into the midterms and say, look, we fought for this on the campaign trail. The president and congressional Republicans made good on that promise. We are trying to do what we told you guys, you know, we were going to do on the campaign trail. Just give us a little bit more time with the economy. So it would certainly potentially be a win for Republicans. But again, we don't know if the questions will stop with this ultimate release.
Yeah, a lot to get into today with that meeting inside of the Oval Office. A lot to get to in terms of Capitol Hill. Christian, thank you so much. I appreciate you breaking it all down here on Live Now from Fox. Great insight.
Take care, Andy.